You're listening to the Drummer Daily Podcast, the only daily podcast dedicated just to drummers. Go to my website at danielhadaway.com. Hey there, how's it going? I am coming to you live from the passenger seat of a rental car in the parking lot of Disney World. I wish I was joking, but I'm not. But just so you know, that's how dedicated I am to getting this podcast to you every day. We're actually playing a show here at a conference at Disney World today, and just got here. We're waiting for some people to show up so we can check into our hotel quickly and then head to sound check, and then we'll play later tonight. And so I'm sitting at the only quiet place I could find was the passenger seat of this car, the rental car. Everyone else is out of the car, and so I'm here doing this right now. But that brings me to another thing. That is the downside of playing music. You think, oh, it's great. You know, people might see on our schedule that, oh, we're going to Disney World. You know, well, actually, I am not going to Disney World. I'm on the property, and I will be here long enough to do a sound check, play, then go to bed and leave in the morning. So I will see that I am at Disney World, but I will not experience any of Disney World, which in my opinion actually could be considered worse than just not going to Disney World at all, is to be so close, but not to experience any of it. But anyway, that's not what this podcast is about today. This is going to be a quick podcast because I don't have much time before this sound check is going to happen. But I wanted to tell you, some people had asked me about tips for locking in with a drummer or a bass player locking in with a drummer and how to do that. And there's a lot of things obviously that can go into that. My number one tip for having a bass player lock in with the drummer is to make sure the bass player is really good, but that doesn't always work. So my secret is this. Now this is something that it's not so much for drummers, for you drummers to actually change how you play. It's more for a tip you can kind of give your bass players to help them play and sound like they're locking in better, or actually locking in better. Because if it sounds like it's locking in better, it is locking in better. And that tip is this. Tell your bass player to try to play late. Play all of his or her notes late behind you in the kick drum. It can be hard to try to hit right, for a bass player to kind of hit right with your kick drum hits, which is kind of what always a bass player is normally going for. But the funny thing about playing bass is, most of the time when a bass player hits their notes, unless they're really plucking away at the strings, you can't really hear the attack of the bass notes. What you're going to hear, if you're a listener to music, is you're going to hear the attack of the bass drum, and that will be perceived as the attack of the bass guitar as well. So if a bass player is rushing, you are going to hear that stick out like a sore thumb. But the cool thing about it is if a bass player can play late behind a kick drum, it will mask over how late they are, and it actually just sounds like they're locked right in with the kick drum. And I've seen this work even in studio sessions. You can, as a bass player, you can be drastically behind a drummer, and you'll sound like you're just locked in tight with the groove of the drummer. And so it's kind of it's almost like one of my magic trick podcast episodes. But it definitely works. If a bass player can play late behind you, that will help. And the same thing for a drummer. Just another tip kind of to go along with this. If you're the only guy playing with feel on stage, that means you're not playing with feel. Because you're playing with feel compared to what? Even if it's a click track, the audience can't hear the click track, they just hear the entire band. And so I play with a guitar player sometimes who likes to rush, play ahead of the beat, which is common for guitar players. But if that guitar player rushes and everyone else is rushing along with them, and I'm the only one laying back and holding down the beat, it sounds like I'm wrong. And it goes back to something else, from my marching band days, which was, we'd try to do these marching band, these formations on the field, and they'd pick out the one person who was out of line. And the one person who was out of line would always argue and be like, oh, but this is the spot that on the field I'm supposed to be at. And they would always say, if you're the only one doing the right thing when it comes to music, or in this case, the formation, if you're the only one doing the right thing, you're the one who looks like they're wrong, even if you're objectively right. So All that to say, if you give a tip to your bass player like this about laying back and they don't lay back, you can stick to your guns and make the music sound bad, or you can try to adapt how you play to make the music sound better. Because the best drummers in the world play great with bands. They don't just objectively sound great all by themselves and kind of stand out and say, I'm going to be right, and fold your arms and do whatever. They try to get along and help the whole band sound tight and together and like they're playing right. So that's my tip for you today. This is a short one, like I said, because I have the car turned off too, and I'm getting hot. It's Florida. So I'm going to get out of here, and I will talk to you guys again tomorrow. Bye.